Welcome to the 10-Minute Life Coach. This is the internationally renowned podcast presented by me, J. Cleveland Payne, one of the peak performance advisors from Fast Forward Business Properties. In the span of about 10 minutes, I'll present to you a show filled with a few ideas that I believe will help you improve your business and personal lives. I'm also going to let you help me keep me on track by giving some details on some of the features and programs we have in production. In today's show, we're going to show you how to tell the difference between what you want and what you need. But that's going to be just the easy part. We're also going to help you get past choosing the unnecessary wants over the important needs, and even show you how, if you can compromise just a bit on the wants, you can turn them into justifiable needs. So let's start the clock and get to work. We've used the not-so-recent 10-Minute Life Coach and, oh, by the way, survey as a plot device of sorts in the past episodes of this podcast. But I had to bring it back for this episode 41. The more I thought about it, the more and more it seemed perfect to use to diagram the differences between wants and needs. Now, the main purpose of the survey was exactly about that, getting directly from you, the listeners, what you wanted and needed from the future episodes coming down the line for the 10-Minute Life Coach podcast. But to turn the spotlight on myself for a moment, the responses you gave also reflected some basic wants and needs of my own. My ego wanted as close to 100% cooperation in the survey as possible, which technically isn't impossible, but isn't even close to being something you can remotely call probable. I needed enough of a response based on the number of downloads and subscribers to know that I had enough of a responsive audience to justify the work it takes to make the podcast weekly. I got what I needed, but far from what I wanted. My ego also wanted lots of praise and positive feedbacks, and it got that in the form of high approval numbers and plenty of attaboy comments. I needed real insight on what was working and what wasn't working, like the theme music volume issues, critiques of all kinds on the email newsletters, and plenty of questions about why the website didn't have very much pop to it. While I got a little more of what I wanted, I still had to settle for getting exactly what I needed out of it. For the survey to be meaningful, it had to give me a certain amount of information at a certain level of consistency, which it did. To help boost my ego, I wanted it to give me assurance of an audience madly in love with the content and the presenter of the content that always gave their full, undivided attention to every lesson. For that, I didn't even come close. What I needed was assurance that this podcast was not a waste of your time, which could mean it was then a waste of mine. Assuming all I got out of it was the right to wear the title, Life Coach, and that is what I got. Meeting that need, what I wanted wasn't so important that I let it hurt my feelings. At least not for now. A quick definition of want is to feel inclined or to wish, while a quick definition of need is a requirement, necessary duty, or obligation. The two words can be synonyms of each other, with an alternate definition of want as to be lacking or absent as a part or thing necessary to completeness, and an alternate definition of need as a lack of something wanted or deemed necessary. For simplicity and time, we're going to focus on the first definitions. So using those definitions and applying my opening of wants and needs of the survey as the analogy, a new BMW convertible is probably a want if you have a car that is dying and you are responsible for carting around young children back and forth from school and other after-school activities. Likewise, a new pair of Jimmy Choos are probably a want if you need a new pair of shoes that won't leave your feet pinched and cramped after standing in them for 10 hours or more. So knowing this, are you now ready and willing to toss those frivolous wants out of your mind forever and focus on obtaining just the things that you truly need? Of course not. You're human. And despite your knowledge of what you need, you're still going to want what you want. And that is actually fine. Well, that's fine, at least if you look out for just two things. First, you have secured all the basic needs that apply to you. If it is just you, your needs may not account to more than just a warm, dry place to sleep and something reasonably fit for man to eat. You may choose extravagant tastes for your crew of you, but if it is just you and you alone, you can learn to manage on the smallest of stakes, that is, STAKES's, but I guess STEAKSs could apply in this logic as well. This is not such a simple choice if you have people who actually depend on you for their survival. I might be able to live off of ramen noodles and hot dogs for an infinite period of time myself, but my wife will only go about a day before she will ask, when do I plan to give her some real food, like some STEAKSs. The mortgage, the car note, all sorts of insurance, lights, gas, water, cell phones, and the cable, home phone, internet bundle must be covered before any wants can be chased in our house. As my wife is fond of having a house to live in, a car to drive, coverage for everything and everybody, hot running water for showers, talking on her cell phone, and electricity to power her tablet, which she uses to surf the web on high-speed internet while she watches DVR'd reruns of Charmed on the HD TV. Actually, let me back up. In our household, we have a need to put aside 10% in church tithes and our direct drafts for retirement funds and savings accounts even before we get to paying those bills. Now, you can argue that the internet, cable, and tablet computers are more of a want than a need, and I would take the time to hear out your argument. I don't have the time to give you my argument here, so if you do want to discuss it, simply reply in the comments section for the podcast on the website at 10minutelifecoach.com or email the show at 10minutelifecoach@att.net. Sorry about that. Got on a long tangent there for a moment. The second thing you'll need to look out for are the emotions and motivations of the want itself. If it is not necessary, why would you want a thing? The answer really matters to you and you alone if you can justify the want and its pursuit doesn't harm anyone in the process. If your health allows it, eating a Big Mac for every meal may seem weird to most people, but it happens, trust me. Pursuing the affection of a woman who has a restraining order on you will seem weird to all people and is something that you should stop pursuing. Just for an example, look to see if you are seeking your want out of loss, need, or addiction. If you find you're chasing after an unhealthy want, you should seek help immediately to get yourself back on the right track. Of course, if you can bundle your wants into your actual needs, you get a bonus. You'll probably have to sacrifice a little to achieve these double deals, though. Let's look back at the example given earlier of the needing a car and wanting it to be a BMW. Excuse me for being presumptuous, but I would expect that if you had a BMW budget to begin with, chances are you wouldn't be driving the car you have until the wheels fall off. But you don't need to trade in a clunker for a soon-to-be clunker. It's okay to aim a little higher, buy something a little nicer with as many features that you were looking for in that luxury car of your dreams, with a caveat that it will actually fall in line with your wide-awake budget and needs. It's okay to want something you haven't got. If you build on the foundation of taking care of your critical needs first, then you are free and clear to build upon whatever you need to earn the right to acquire that want, with no doubt whatsoever. That puts a wrap on the main theme for this week. If you like the advice given or the advisor giving the advice, why don't you consider a more serious investment into your personal improvement journey? If we can help you out for yourself personally or for your business. If you're ready for some serious one-on-one work, we can set you up with a chat time, some sessions with one of our peak performance advisors set up for regular phone coaching sessions. No long-term commitment is necessary, and it's relatively painless, trust me. For more information, just send us an email. Send it to pppadvisors@att.net. So I've given you this week's advice, and I've asked you to make the upgrade. This is the point where I let you, the listeners, hold my feet to the fire on upcoming projects that, well, we cook up here, and sometimes we try to slide out of if we can't quite make happen. We call it the Accountability on Me segment because there's not a better name for it yet, and it's exactly what it is. It's you making me accountable for what we're saying, and you don't have to be a long-time listener. If this is your first time listening in, anyone listening has valid points, and we'll take them all. In keeping up with the stats for this podcast, one of the more disappointing information points that I have is that very few people actually use the website that this podcast is built around. That fact became a saving grace after a critical failure with my hosting provider, where my data is apparently still there. In fact, it is still there, but the framework that makes the WordPress around it work doesn't work for some reason. So while the audio files that are housed in the folder that hold the 10-Minute Life Coach are still accessible from all remote feeds, including our greatest source of traffic at iTunes, the website, which I love, simply isn't there. Luckily, that is not a problem for you who received this audio because you're still receiving this audio. It is a problem for what I had planned to talk about, a new and hopefully improved email newsletter format for this podcast and the Oh By The Way newsletter. We received plenty of requests to send out the newsletter in a one-column format, and that was the plan for next week after we switched over to a new list manager. Except now I can't properly promote signups for new subscribers since I've got nowhere to send them to at the moment. So we'll focus on that a little later, maybe even next week. But as my attention has been taken by burning to the ground and then rebuilding the main website, I haven't had the chance to get a proper domain name for one of our newest ventures, that is Mobile Motivation Daily. It's a website that is optimized for browsers on mobile devices such as cell phones and tablets. Also being tweaked is an Android app, which more or less works, but we want it as close to perfection as possible before we officially put it on the Android market. I've sent links to our Facebook and Twitter page already, so feel free to go digging there to pick it up in its beta state if you're so inclined. So for next week, enact your own emergency plan to make sure you can still get our latest episodes of the 10-Minute Life Coach in case your personal plan A blows up in your face. We can be found at various places: Facebook, Twitter, iTunes, Blueberry at BLUBRRY.com, Stitcher Smart Radio at Stitcher.com, Podcast Pickle, Podfeed, and hopefully sooner rather than later, the podcast's home base at 10MinuteLifeCoach.com. And take a moment, if you will, to look for our new mobile motivation website. It's optimized for mobile device browsers at the currently not so reminder-friendly link of parkedplaces.com/mobile motivation. As always, you are free to send me encouragement, ridicule, questions about my sanity, whatever you like via comments on the website or via email at 10MinuteLifeCoach.com. Well, at least comments on the website when I get the website back up. And that's a wrap for this week's program. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne, and thank you so much for listening to the 10-Minute Life Coaching Program. For more information on the show, visit its online home at 10MinuteLifeCoach.com. For information on signing up for some personal one-on-one sessions with one of our peak performance advisors, that's very simple. Just send us an email to ppadvisors, that's PPADVISORS, at att.net. Next week on the 10-Minute Life Coach podcast, I'll present some more ideas and tips to help you get your business and even your personal life in order for absolutely no monetary charge. All I'm asking of you is about 10 minutes of your time. Until then, I say again, thank you